Have you ever heard this phrase? Women want to be touched, but here's what most men get wrong. They think it's all about technique, about knowing which buttons to press. After 25 years working as a relationship counselor, I can tell you with absolute certainty that this couldn't be further from the truth. I'm Dr. Amelia Wright, and today I'm going to share something that 90% of men completely miss, even after decades of marriage. There are 7 specific places on a woman's body that, when touched with genuine care and understanding, create a connection far deeper than physical pleasure. These aren't the obvious zones you're thinking of. They're emotional doorways, and most men walk right past them without even noticing. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've been married for years, perhaps decades. Surely you know your partner by now. But here's the thing. A woman's body, especially as she moves through her middle years and beyond, responds to touch in ways that have nothing to do with passion and everything to do with feeling safe, seen, and genuinely cherished. The research backs this up. Scientists at the University of Maryland discovered that women's skin nerve endings are, on average, 10 times more sensitive than men's. But it's not just about sensitivity, it's about what that touch communicates. Let me be direct with you. In my practice, I've worked with thousands of couples, many of them in their 50s, 60s, and beyond. And the same story comes up again and again. The husband says, "I don't understand. I touch her, but she doesn't respond the way she used to." The wife, when we speak privately, tells me, "He touches me like he's ticking boxes. There's no feeling in it anymore." This isn't about desire fading with age. It's about men never learning, or perhaps forgetting, how to communicate love through their hands. Right, let's get straight to it. I'm going to walk you through these 7 zones, and I want you to pay close attention because understanding these could transform your relationship. Before we begin, please do subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I share insights like this regularly to help people rebuild the warmth in their relationships. Thank you for being here. The first place, and this might surprise you, is the nape of her neck, right where her hairline begins. Now, this isn't about massage technique or pressure points. When you gently place your fingertips there, very softly, barely making contact, you're touching an area where she unconsciously holds tension. Think about it. We carry stress in our shoulders and neck. When you touch her there with genuine tenderness, not trying to achieve anything, just being present with her, something shifts. Her nervous system registers safety. According to research from Stanford University, slow, gentle touch in sensitive areas triggers the release of oxytocin, often called the trust hormone. It doesn't just create physical relaxation, it creates emotional openness. This is why this simple gesture, done while she's standing at the kitchen sink or sitting reading, can say more than 100 words. The second zone is between her shoulder blades, that soft area of her back. This part of her body is like a shield, protecting her from the world. When you place your hand there, palm flat, with warmth but no pressure, you're essentially saying, "I've got your back." I've seen this work miracles in my practice. One gentleman, a retired teacher from Surrey, told me he'd started doing this whilst his wife prepared their evening meal. He'd simply walk up behind her and rest his hand there for a moment, not saying anything. Within a fortnight, she mentioned to him that she'd been feeling closer to him lately. She couldn't quite put her finger on why, but she felt more connected. That's the power of this touch. It works below conscious awareness. Number 3, and this one's crucial, is her hands, specifically her fingers and palms. Now, I don't mean holding hands whilst walking, though that's lovely too. I mean taking her hand when you're both sitting down, perhaps watching television, and very slowly tracing your thumb across her palm, gently holding each finger. A woman's hands are an extension of how she feels emotionally. They're how she expresses care. Through cooking, through gestures, through all the ways she shows love. When you hold her hands with genuine attention, you're acknowledging all of that. You're saying, I see you. I see everything you do. Research has shown that hand-holding reduces stress hormones and increases feelings of emotional bonding. But it has to be done mindfully, not absent-mindedly. The fourth spot is that small hollow just below her jawline, right behind her ear. This is incredibly sensitive territory, and here's the important bit. You can only touch this area when there's already deep trust between you. If you've been distant, if there's been tension, don't start here. This is advanced territory. But when the trust is there, a very light touch with your fingertips, barely grazing the skin, communicates respect for her vulnerability. It says, I honor your sensitivity. One of my clients, a woman in her late 50s, told me that when her husband discovered this spot, it was like he'd found the key to her heart. It's not sexual, she said. It's intimate in a completely different way. Right, number 5. The inner thigh, near the knee. Not higher up, mind you. Near the knee, well away from more intimate areas. This is about respectful proximity. When you gently place your hand there, perhaps whilst you're both sitting on the sofa, it signals closeness without pressure. It's affectionate without being demanding. The key here is the pace. If you move quickly or with obvious intent, you've missed the point entirely. This should feel like sunshine on skin, warm, pleasant, unhurried. Many women have told me this kind of touch makes them feel desired in a way that respects their autonomy. It's not about taking, it's about appreciating. The 6th place is the lower back, that dip between her waist and hip. When you embrace her from behind and rest your hand here, not gripping, just resting with warmth, you're offering protection and support. This position, with her back against your chest, creates one of the strongest emotional connections possible. It's vulnerable for her. She can't see you. But when she relaxes into it, when she leans back, you know you've created a moment of genuine trust. I've recommended this to countless couples who've lost their sense of physical closeness. Start here, not in the bedroom. Stand together whilst waiting for the kettle to boil. Let her feel your steady presence. And finally, number 7. This one's the most overlooked and perhaps the most powerful. It's not her breasts or anywhere you might expect. It's the area around her navel, the lower abdomen. This is the center of her being, where instinct and emotion meet. Most men either ignore this area entirely or approach it too quickly, as if it's just a stop on the way somewhere else. But when you place your warm hand here, slowly and respectfully, like you're cradling something precious, you're touching the very core of her femininity. This area represents vulnerability, life force, intuition. Women have described this touch as feeling seen in my entirety. But it requires complete trust and must never feel rushed or goal-oriented. Now, let me explain why these 7 places matter so much, particularly as we age. The female body doesn't respond to touch the way it did at 20 or 30. It responds to meaning, to emotional context, to the story behind the touch. The University of Maryland study I mentioned earlier found something fascinating. Whilst women's skin is more sensitive, the real difference is in how their brains process touch. Physical sensation and emotional connection are neurologically linked in ways they aren't for most men. When you touch these 7 zones with genuine care, you're not just stimulating nerve endings, you're speaking directly to the emotional centers of her brain. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. I worked with a couple, I'll call them Margaret and Robert, both in their early 60s. Robert had recently retired from his position at a firm in Manchester. They'd been married for 37 years, raised 3 children, and somewhere along the way, they'd become more like flatmates than lovers. Margaret came to me first, and she was in tears. "He doesn't touch me anymore," she said, "not in any way that feels like he means it." When I spoke to Robert separately, he was baffled. "I do touch her," he insisted. "I give her a kiss in the morning, pat her shoulder when I walk past. What more does she want?" This is the disconnect I see constantly. Robert was touching her body. He wasn't touching her heart. I taught him about these 7 zones, emphasizing that it wasn't about technique, but about intention. About a month later, they came back for a follow-up session. Margaret was radiant. "He's different," she told me. "I can't quite explain it, but his hands feel warm now, like he's actually there with me." Robert smiled a bit sheepishly. I started with just putting my hand on the back of her neck whilst she was doing the washing up. I didn't think it would matter, but she leaned back into me. We stood there for maybe 2 minutes, not saying anything. It was the closest I'd felt to her in years. Another example, a lady named Patricia, 56, came to one of my workshops after her husband had started making more effort with physical affection, but it wasn't landing right. "He's trying," she said, "but it feels mechanical, like he's following a manual." This is exactly what you must avoid. If you approach these 7 zones like a checklist, like you're trying to achieve a particular outcome, your partner will sense it immediately. Women are extraordinarily good at detecting inauthentic touch. Their nervous systems are wired for it. It's an evolutionary adaptation related to protecting themselves and their children. The secret, if there is one, is this: slow down. Take your time. Be genuinely present. When you place your hand on her neck, don't be thinking about what comes next. Just be there, feeling the warmth of her skin, noticing how she responds, respecting her completely. Touch shouldn't be a means to an end. It should be an end in itself, a moment of genuine connection. Now, you might be wondering about the science behind all this. Why does this work? Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's this hormone called oxytocin. It's released during positive physical contact, particularly slow, gentle touch. Oxytocin creates feelings of trust, bonding, and emotional safety. But here's what's fascinating. It's released more strongly when touch is given without expectation, when it's genuinely caring rather than goal-directed. Studies have shown that women's oxytocin levels remain elevated for longer after caring touch, and this correlates directly with feelings of emotional intimacy. There's also the matter of the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of our nervous system responsible for rest, relaxation, and emotional openness. Gentle touch to sensitive areas, particularly when it's unexpected and loving, activates this system. It literally helps her body shift from a state of vigilance to a state of receptivity. This is particularly important as we age, because stress, worry, and the general demands of life can leave us in a constant state of low-level tension. These 7 touches are like reset buttons. Let me address something important here. Some of you might be thinking, well, this all sounds lovely, but my wife isn't responsive to touch at all anymore. I hear this frequently, but in 25 years, I've never encountered a woman who genuinely didn't want loving touch. What I have encountered are women who've learned not to want it because the touch they received was dismissive, perfunctory, or solely focused on sex. If you've got years or even decades of that pattern to overcome, it won't change overnight. You'll need patience. Start with the least vulnerable areas. Her hands, perhaps, or her shoulders. Do it without any expectation whatsoever. Don't follow it up with sexual advances. Don't even mention it. Just let it be what it is, a moment of connection. Over time, as she begins to trust that your touch is genuine, that it's not a transaction or a prelude to something else, her responsiveness will likely return. I've seen this happen even in relationships where physical intimacy had been absent for years. Here's something else worth mentioning. These 7 zones work because they're not the obvious erogenous zones. They're intimate without being explicitly sexual. This distinction is crucial, especially for women in their middle years and beyond. Many women feel uncomfortable with the idea that they should still be sexually available or responsive in the same way they were decades ago. Their bodies have changed, their hormones have shifted, their priorities are different. But the desire for emotional closeness, for feeling cherished and appreciated, that never diminishes. These touches speak to that deeper need. Think about it this way. When you were courting your wife all those years ago, you probably touched her in these ways naturally. A hand on the small of her back as you walked into a restaurant, fingers entwined while sitting in the cinema, a gentle touch to her neck when you stood behind her. Somewhere along the way, perhaps as life got busy with careers and children and mortgages, those touches disappeared. What I'm suggesting is that you bring them back, but with the wisdom and depth that comes from years together. I want to emphasize something crucial here. This isn't manipulation. This isn't some technique to get your wife to be more affectionate or sexually available. If that's your mindset, stop right now. This will backfire spectacularly because women can sense insincerity from a mile away. These touches work because they're fundamentally about giving, not getting. They're about communicating. I value you. I cherish you. I'm genuinely here with you in this moment. If that's authentic, the rest will follow naturally. If it's not, no amount of technique will help. Let me give you some practical guidance on how to start implementing this. Don't try to do all 7 zones in one go. That would be overwhelming and, frankly, a bit peculiar. Start with 1. Perhaps tomorrow morning, when your wife is having her cup of tea, come up behind her and very gently place your hand on the back of her neck for just a few seconds. Don't say anything profound. Don't make a big deal of it. Just do it, and then carry on with your day. Notice how she responds, but don't comment on it. Do this for a few days. Then perhaps add another zone. When you're both sitting watching television in the evening, reach over and hold her hand. Not absent-mindedly, but with genuine attention. Stroke her palm with your thumb. Again, don't make it into a production. Just let it be a quiet moment of connection. Over the course of a few weeks, gradually incorporate more of these touches into your daily life. The key is that they should feel natural, not forced. Right, here's another important point. Pay attention to her responses, but don't demand them. Some women are very responsive to touch. They'll visibly relax. They might lean into you. They might sigh contentedly. Others are more reserved in their responses. Just because you don't see an obvious reaction doesn't mean it's not working. Give it time. Trust the process. And most importantly, do it because you genuinely want to connect with your partner, not because you're expecting a particular outcome. I've had men ask me, what if I'm not naturally affectionate? What if this feels awkward? That's a fair question. Many men, particularly those of us who grew up in an era when physical affection wasn't particularly encouraged, do find this challenging at first. My advice is this: start small, be consistent, and remember why you're doing it. You're not trying to become someone you're not. You're simply learning to express love in a language your partner understands. It will feel more natural with time. There's also the matter of reciprocity. Some men have said to me, I'm doing all this touching, but she's not reciprocating. Well, firstly, that shouldn't be why you're doing it. But secondly, give her time. If you've established a pattern over years where touch equals expectation, she's going to be cautious about initiating it herself. Keep offering genuine, caring touch with no strings attached, and eventually she'll likely begin to reciprocate. But even if she doesn't in the way you expect, you're still creating more warmth and connection in your relationship. Now, let's talk about the bedroom, because I know that's where many of you are hoping this leads. And it might well do. But here's the crucial thing. These 7 touches should happen primarily outside the bedroom. They should be part of your daily life together, not just foreplay. When touch only happens in the bedroom, it becomes predictable and transactional. When it happens throughout the day, a hand on her lower back as you pass in the hallway, fingers gently on her neck whilst you're both in the kitchen, holding hands whilst watching the news. It weaves intimacy into the fabric of your everyday life. If and when these touches do transition into more intimate moments, the same principles apply. Slow down, be present, pay attention to her responses. The zones I've described work just as powerfully in intimate contexts, but only if you've already established trust and connection through using them in non-sexual situations. Don't suddenly start touching her neck during sex if you've never touched her neck before. She'll wonder what you're up to. Build the pattern first. Let me share one final story. A gentleman named William, 68, came to see me after his wife had mentioned in passing that she felt they were just going through the motions. He was devastated. He'd always thought they had a solid relationship. When we discussed it, he realized that whilst they were polite and companionable, they rarely touched anymore beyond a quick peck goodnight. I suggested he try these 7 zones, particularly focusing on her hands and neck to start with. 3 months later, he sent me an email. "My wife told me yesterday that she feels like we're dating again," he wrote. "We were sitting in the garden, and I was just holding her hand, and she leaned over and kissed me properly for the first time in, I don't know how long. I hadn't realized how much we'd lost until I saw how much these small things brought back." That's the power of understanding how to touch your partner in ways that speak to her heart, not just her body. It's not complicated. It's not about technique or performance. It's about genuine care, respect, and presence. After 25 years in this field, I can tell you that this is what makes the difference between couples who drift apart and couples who grow closer with age. So here's what I want you to do. After you finish watching this video, don't just move on to the next thing. Think about which of these 7 zones you'll start with. Make a decision right now. Will it be her neck, her hands, her back? Then, within the next 24 hours, put it into practice. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just do it naturally when you're together. And then keep doing it, consistently, with genuine intention. I'd love to hear how this works for you. Leave a comment below and let me know which zone you started with and what response you got. Your experiences might help other men who are watching this. And if you found this helpful, please do subscribe to the channel. I regularly share insights from my 25 years working with couples, all aimed at helping you build deeper, warmer, more connected relationships. Remember, it's never too late to bring more warmth and intimacy into your relationship. The fact that you've watched this video all the way through tells me you're someone who genuinely wants to understand their partner better. That's the first step. Now take the second step. Put this into practice. Your relationship can change, starting with the warmth of your hands and the intention behind your touch. Thank you so much for being here, and I wish you all the very best in rekindling that closeness with your partner.